It's a new year. We're in 2024. All the stuff that happened in 2023 is behind us. We learn from, we grow from, and now we're in 2024. And every year I come up with sort of professional goals that I want to accomplish. Not a lot, but just certain goals that I feel are attainable, and that if I just put my mind to it, I can do it. And so this year I've got about three things that I want to accomplish. Two of them are I'm kind of following them already, but I'm really going to be focusing on them. One of them I've promised in the past and I haven't really delivered. So I'm going to be trying to do more of and really work on that. But the idea is really get the information out there on the ocean and ocean conservation and ocean science. And that's what we're going to be talking about today are my plans for 2024 for how to protect the ocean and speak up for blue. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. This is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. And today I want to thank you so much for joining me and just so much for all the wonderful support that I've had over the years. This is 2024. I launched the podcast in 2025. I started recording the podcast in 2014. In and around June is when I launched. And this has been a journey for me. This has been a journey that I've been enjoying. It's had its ups and downs as any journey would, but it's been a real, eye opener in terms of what I can accomplish once I set my mind to it. Let's be honest, podcasting is not the easiest thing in the world. It's easier for most in terms of editing and so forth, but I've been in this business for a long time, and it takes up a lot of time. I do this as part of on top of my day job, on top of being a parent, on top of being a football and hockey coach. So I do this because it's my passion. I don't make a lot of money on this. One of the things I'm going to be talking about today. But the goal for today is to really talk about what I want to accomplish in 2024, things I want to move towards. It's a New Year's resolution, as many would say. And I know people are going back and forth on New Year's resolutions. I see some people who are like, yes, this is what I want to accomplish in 2024. Other people are like, no, I've already been trying to accomplish this. I'm just going to make more of a focus, or I don't really care about these things right now. I want to care more about, just being a better person and all that kind of stuff. And so I have personal goals that I want to accomplish in 2024. I also have, professional goals that I want to accomplish in 2024. And then there's my passion goals, which is the podcast. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Not only just the podcast, but the overall messaging. So just to kind of bring you back a little bit about the history of what I've been trying to accomplish. I work under the umbrella of Speak Up for Blue. When I first launched the podcast, it was called Speak Up for Blue. The idea was to speak up for the ocean, was to have properties on the internet, digital properties on the internet that, people could use to gain more information on what's happening in the ocean, what they can do about it and how they can speak up for it. That's really what it comes down to. It was Speak Up for Blue. Started off as that. I launched the podcast to Speak Up, but before I did YouTube videos and I did a blog. Started off with a blog actually, and I want to write every day, new story every day, and just based off other stories that was going on, just kind of summarize it and provide it for people. Then I realized it wasn't really something I'd like to do. I didn't love writing. I didn't have a lot of confidence in my writing ability, and so I was always second guessing myself, and that happens a lot with content creation. No matter if you're writing, speaking, doing a video, it doesn't matter. You always have that thing where you're just like, nah, I'm not sure if I'm really good at this. You try and seek approval from everybody else, and I wasn't necessarily getting the traction that other blogs were getting. Deep Sea News and Southern Fried Science were getting, which I loved and I still love to this day. But this is something that I want to do myself and have my own sort of perspective on it, which I loved. But anyway, so I moved from a blog to doing YouTube videos and posting the YouTube videos, not only on YouTube, but also, taking the link and putting it on the blog itself and always having that website. It's always good to have some sort of website that people go to in case all the YouTube and the social media shut down or, demonetize or try and get you off. There's always something happening with different platforms for whatever reason. And so it's always good to have a website. So I always had the website where I could post all of my material, which I continue to do at speakupforblue.com. The website's changed quite a bit, but that's essentially what's been happening. So I've been able to do that, and I've been able to be successful at that. YouTube was great for me. I really enjoyed it. However, the editing took a lot more time than I anticipated. And so I was like, I don't want to really do all this editing. I had toddlers at the time, and it was a lot of work, and I was tired at night after working my job. So I wanted to make sure that I was able to put all that together and say, okay, this is what, I'm going to put something that I can do consistently without hating it all the time and without taking too much time. And my editing skills weren't the best at that point. So I started podcasting. A friend introduced me to podcasts. I started podcasting, and I immediately fell in love with it. Started doing once a week, and then I went to 5 times a week. I had some help with that, somebody summarizing those episodes every day. Then, Ocean Talk Friday came out with Nathan Johnson, and then it went back down to 3 days a week, and then it never went back to 1 day a week. But I really enjoyed it. I upgraded my microphones, I upgraded my equipment over time, and I started to grow a following. And I started, the podcast started to gain some traction in terms of number of downloads, which is how you measure podcasts. And I started to get people who were engaging with me and saying, hey, this is great. And I started going to conferences and covering conferences and so forth. And then COVID hit and I couldn't go to conferences anymore. But, that's something that I'd like to do again, just to get more out there and get to, bring you information that you wouldn't get anywhere else. That's the goal in terms of interviews and so forth. But it's always been great. It's always been something that I've loved, and I really, I think about quite a bit. I think about growing all the time, and I think it's really interesting when we look at how we do all of this, podcasting and content creation. Everybody's like, I want to grow to be like the biggest podcast, or I want to have a huge following. And for me, it's been about the engagement. For me, it's been about hearing the stories of people who are like, this is what I want to do. This is, I listen to this episode and hear my thoughts on it. Getting that feedback, opening up that conversation is really what this podcast was started on. The value of, hey, I want you to learn about the pod, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about these episodes, about the stories that come out of these things. And I think that's a really important aspect to how we communicate science and conservation, ocean science and conservation. I think it's something that needs to be done more, not necessarily focusing on growth to being the biggest thing ever. I always want to get new listeners, and I'm always going to have that in, try to do that in the future. But it's not going to be like, my focus is not just to maximize the number of downloads and try and please everybody. My focus is spread that message. So there's really 3 things that I am going to do. I'm really going to focus on this year to spread that message. The first thing is the mindset. The mindset of just kind of what I talked about. It's not about being the biggest. It's not about scaling up and growing all the time. It's about really caring about the content that's put out and really caring about the people who listen to the content and getting that feedback and opening up those lines of conversation from those people. So I have a Facebook group that's called Speak Up for Blue Community, but I haven't really been participating in a lot. That will increase, and there might be a potential switch either this year or next year. I'm not too sure. The goal is to have more conversations. If you're part of the Speak Up for Blue community, there's also a chat channel that I post a lot, and I kind of have conversations with people in, and you're more than welcome to join that. I've put out invites to everybody who's in the Speak Up for Blue community, but if you're looking to get access to that community, just go to speakupforblue.com/group. It should take you to that. If you have a Facebook account, you can sign up. It's really easy to do. Love to hear, your thoughts from the podcast and just on ocean conservation and science in general in that group. And I'll be participating a little bit more in that group. But the idea, again, it's that mindset. It's not necessarily a growth mindset. It's an engagement mindset. The goal is to engage with people. And that's going to happen on social media as well. Not to say that I'm going to be posting more. I will be posting more in social media. But the idea is to engage with people more in social media. On different platforms, comment on their posts, engage with them in conversations. I feel like that growth will happen from there, but it's also more of how can we have great conversations online about ocean conservation? Not necessarily in an aggressive way, but in a positive way. I think that's what I would like to see more of. Ask people questions, contribute to other people's questions and so forth. So you'll see a lot of how to protect the ocean on Instagram, on TikTok, and so forth in the comments section, commenting and asking questions and providing support for the people who are doing the work out there that I may or may not know, personally at some point, but engaging with them more. So that's the whole goal. I always ask for engagement from you if you have questions, but I also am going to be reaching out to some of you who I see in my feeds or search for in terms of ocean conservation stuff. So if you see me in there, know that I'm coming in a positive light. I want to help you, support you, answer questions, or do anything like that. That's always, been my goal, and it will always be my goal. So that's the first thing, is really that mindset, right? Is to switch from just like a growth mindset to really focus on an engagement mindset and getting better connections with my community. That's the thing that I love the most, is when I get to interact with people, not only in the audience, but just in the ocean conservation community. It's always been fun. One thing that I love to do is go to conferences. Hopefully maybe get to go a little more to some conferences this year. We'll see how that works, but that's the goal, right? And it's expensive to go to conferences. We all know that. But regardless, that's sort of the one thing. It's the mindset. The second thing has to do with increasing my reach with the podcast. So, as you may or may not know, you're probably listening to this podcast on a specific podcast app that you prefer. It could be Apple Podcasts, it could be Spotify, it could be Overcast, it could be Castbox, it could be anything. There's so many different destinations, we call them. When I look at my host, there's just so many things that you can do, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on. I'm usually attached to everything. The one thing that I haven't been attached to as much is YouTube, from a audio podcast listening perspective. Now, just to give you this is a lot of podcast tech stuff, but it's not like, I'm not going to go into complete detail. Google itself, which owns YouTube, has had a very spotty history with promoting podcasts. They had Google Podcast app for a while. It didn't really work out. They didn't promote it that well. People didn't really catch on that much. I was on it for a bit. They eventually closed it down. And what they've done now is they've moved all the podcasting into YouTube. Now, there are video podcasts and there are audio podcasts. Now, this podcast is an audio podcast. And last year, I dabbled at putting a video podcast together, or recording the video as I did the audio podcast to kind of repurpose what I've been saying and posting those videos on YouTube. And because you were able to do a podcast by just putting a playlist together, and it would pick it up in YouTube Music as well. I didn't really like doing that. Doing the audio podcast is different than doing a video podcast. There's a lot of different things that go on, and I didn't want to necessarily confuse the audio audience with being like, oh yeah, by the way, if you're on YouTube, put a comment below or something like that. So what I've decided to do is separate them, is to do an audio podcast through one way and then do a video podcast through another. And so I'll talk about those two. And the idea is to be on YouTube increases my reach. So from the audio perspective, there is the host that I have called Libsyn, Liberated Syndication. They connect me to all, like I upload my file and then they connect my RSS feed to a lot of different places. And so they do have an option to go on a YouTube channel. Now, I've used this option in the past. However, I did it on my actual video channel, which kind of messed up a lot of my statistics, which I didn't love. And so I was like, okay, like this has got to change. Like I need to take this down and I need to, redo this at some point later. And I just kind of put it to the side. What I've decided to do is actually come up with a completely different YouTube channel called How to Protect the Ocean. That channel will only have the audio feed from my podcast. And right now it's only publishing the new podcasts, like the audio podcasts, as I publish them. And that's fine. I've got to find a way to put all my old episodes, like, this is episode 1550, right? So I have a lot of episodes. So they'll be posted, they'll be there on that channel for you to listen to. There's no visual, it's just the cover image. There's no visual aspect there. But the idea for that is to not only increase my reach there, but also to get put on YouTube Music, which is where their podcasts are going to be held, or podcasts are going to be hosted. And so the idea is to expand my reach through another destination, the YouTube Music destination. I'm not expecting a lot of views on the YouTube channel. I'm hoping to get more views or listens and downloads on YouTube Music, but it's just something that I have to kind of look at and just see. But that's going to be up there for a long time. So if you do listen to YouTube music, my podcast should be there at some point and sometime soon, because I started to post there. And it'll be posted on an automatic basis. So every Monday, Wednesday, Friday when I post, there'll be a new episode, and you can go take a look through there or listen through there. Now, the video aspect, the video podcast aspect, as you've probably heard, if you're anywhere remotely into following podcasts, there is, this thing that's like, oh, hey, like video podcasts are the new thing. People are doing really well on video podcasts. We're seeing them pop up all the time. Celebrities, sports players, sports celebrities, analysts and so forth, TV personalities, everybody's got a video podcast, and they're doing well on YouTube. And those podcasts get thousands and tens of thousands, even 100,000s of views, and people watch that. Now, the one thing that the podcasting industry has discovered is video podcasts haven't really increased for everybody. It's not really providing that huge exposure for everybody, like the independent podcasters like myself. Now, I haven't put a full sort of throttle on that yet, which this is my plan for this year, is to do more video podcast, but under a different name. I don't want to confuse people with How to Protect the Ocean. This is going to be called Ocean Talk, where I talk about the ocean. I'm going to talk about conservation. I'm going to talk about science. Very similar, but it's going to be in a video format. And the editing is going to be a little bit more in tune. So it's going to be a little bit more like a video show, like a web series, rather than a series like that's just a podcast, right? More visuals. There's going to be pictures involved, like, flashing in pictures, going to be graphics that come up and stuff like that as I get better and better at video editing. I haven't decided on, how many episodes a week I'm going to do. I'm still working through that workflow, but I'm going to start off with about 2, maybe 3, just to see how it goes. It's just a matter of, when you do something and you try and do something consistently, you have to really get your workflow down. And so my editing's got to improve. As that improves, I'm going to be starting to I'm not going to do a ton of editing, but there's going to be some pictures involved and that kind of stuff. And that takes time. All that takes time. And so that's stuff that you have to put into play, and you have to understand that takes time. So that's the video podcast aspect and the audio podcast aspect. So the channel for the audio podcast for How to Protect the Ocean is up. It's running. I just got to figure out how to put the old material on there, not just the new material. The video podcast will start to come up probably the second week of January. You'll start to see that coming in. I've got the week off, so I'm looking forward to doing a lot of video editing and video podcasts and that kind of stuff. So those are the 3 main things that I'm going to be doing. My storytelling is going to change a little, or going to be added on a little bit. I'm in the midst of doing 2 video documentaries, mini documentaries. So we're going to see how that kind of does. That takes a lot more time than I had first anticipated, but that'll come with the video editing and everything and putting stuff together. There's a little bit of fear in that, putting stuff together. Is it really right? Is it something that I'm confident in showing other people? It's a vulnerable thing for me to do content creation and show people and that kind of stuff. So you'll start to see that. Other digital properties, you'll start to see me post a little bit more. TikTok, Instagram, Threads, X and Twitter is a little bit, I've got a love-hate relationship with that app. I always have. Nothing from a political standpoint, just never really loved posting on there, but you never know. With Threads, I might start posting there as well. LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff. So you're going to see a lot more. The goal is to produce a lot more on there. But the thing for me when I go to a digital platform is, produce consistently, but also like original content. It's not just going to be you just repurposing. I'd like to do more original content. So we will see how that goes. But those are sort of the goals that I have for 2024. It's not all going to happen at once. I don't expect everything to happen at once, but I would like to get things moving. Like I said, audio podcast is up on YouTube Music, so check it out. Love to hear you guys follow or subscribe or however you get access to that. And then I'll be coming out with the videos. I'll let you know once I post, when I post the audio, I'll let you know that I've posted videos, and then you can start looking at those a little bit more consistently. I'd love your support to share the channel, all that kind of stuff. But that's it. That's it for today. I just wanted to kind of share those goals with you because I feel like, this is always, I've always tried to be transparent. Oh, one more goal that I really should talk about that I've been working on last year and into this year is there are going to be more sponsors in the podcast. So there are going to be ads in the podcast. The goal for the sponsors is to get people, certain sponsors. Some of them are more experimental and see how they go. But the idea, you've heard some of the sponsors before with Ocean Soul. The idea is, to provide something for you that's beneficial, that's good for the environment, and that's a service or product or something like that. But there'll be more ads in the episode. Now, I know some of you don't like ads. You can always fast forward through them. I'm trying to provide something that'll be of value to you. But if you don't like ads, that's fine. There might be an option later on to just like subscribe, like pay for a subscription without the ads. This is it's a hobby, but it's a very expensive hobby. Something I would love to do full time one day. And so the sponsorship is the sort of that beginning journey of doing that. But I don't want it to be at the cost of your enjoyment or things like that, but it will start to happen a little bit by little bit. So, but that's it. That's all the updates I have for today. I'd love to hear your feedback. Join the episodes. If there's some episodes you'd like to see or hear, please let me know. You can contact me on Instagram at How to Protect the Ocean. That's at How to Protect the Ocean. And then, of course, you can always contact me. Go to speakupforblue.com, see all of our updates on there. And you can see other podcasts that we have up there as well. Some that I host, some that I co-host, some that I don't. But they're always good stuff to listen to. So thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.